Here comes another exclusive tip for you, the FAIA members. Maybe you've heard of a risk assessment. What is a risk assessment and who needs one? Many people have misconceptions and misunderstandings about a risk assessment, what it actually is. In this video, Nate Ginter, our CTO, a certified cybersecurity auditor, breaks down exactly that for you.
So especially for agency owners, the answer is you need one. Actually, you're required to have one. The way that you get to that point is kind of interesting. So a risk assessment at a high level tells you about the deficiencies in your security controls. Some of those are administrative, what's your process when you bring somebody on? How do you decide they have access? Who assigns that access? Who checks, what systems, whether it's email or agency management systems, to make sure we don't have, employees from 5 years ago still able to access things, so both an onboarding and offboarding process for that. So that's an example of one of those kind of administrative controls. So does it go to HR? You have to write that workflow down as part of what's called a written information security program, or a WISP. That WISP is going to be written, you got to pick a security standard. So there's, generally anywhere between 13 to 20 different security control areas that they're concerned with. And a risk assessment should be able to tell you if you're meeting the standard that you've chosen. Now, most places that we talk to, especially in smaller agencies, they don't know what you're talking about. Even some of this may sound a little foreign to them. But basically, by default, if a company doesn't have one, we use something from the National Institute of Standards, Standards and Technology, for federal cybersecurity standards, which is kind of a general sort of blank slate template for judging an organization's security procedures. So we'll go through. So the interesting part is, one of the things on the risk assessment, one of the first steps I take, and I'll actually take this step with clients before we even engage with a risk assessment, even in the quoting process, I'll say, do you have a written information security program? Do you have your, IT procedures and security procedures documented? Usually we hear no, or, well, we have something, but maybe it's something downloaded off the internet, or it was valid 15 years ago, but it's not today. So I can already tell you right now, as a free risk assessment for everybody that's out there, do you have a recently updated written information security program that defines how you're accomplishing technological, administrative, and, general security controls? If the answer is no, congratulations, you're in the same bucket a lot of people are, but you've just failed. So the first thing we want to do is, especially for the smaller agencies, people who, don't have maybe somebody who's a little bit more savvy on the technical side in place, it almost becomes like a catch-22. Well, I don't know anything about a risk assessment, so how can I do a security program? I don't know anything about my security program, so how can I know I'm having a proper risk assessment done? So one of the gaps that we fill in at Vine IT and Security Services is kind of going in and helping agencies. So we understand that you don't have somebody, on your staff that's going to be, dedicated to cybersecurity. So we have a generalized template that we build off of a couple of different standards that we'll go through. Now we're going to assume that you don't have anything written down. If you do, we can check it against that. But what we're going to look for is, okay, so what are you actually doing? Most times, a lot of agencies, even the smaller ones, have a lot of good procedures in place. There might be some, specific, things that are maybe a little deficient. So you might be getting reporting from, your IT guy or your outsourced IT provider that's telling you about how your updates are being handled. Are all your machines up to date? Do they have the latest patching? Is antivirus installed and working? But maybe there's nobody that officially signs off on that. So we help kind of refine those processes. We kind of go through and judge them, and then we can make recommendations for, hey, here's how you should adjust this in your, written security program. We can also do for clients if they're looking for end-to-end. So, I can not only take a look at the vulnerabilities that you've got, the risks that are out there for you, I can help you write a policy and procedures according to, the things that you're doing and the things you have in place. Another part of the risk assessment is developing something that you would call like a risk register or network management plan. So if I go in and I see, okay, well, you've got a policy where you're backing up. Maybe you have an internal server. Maybe that's backing up locally, but you don't have any off-site backup. Now that's going to be a risk. Not every risk can be addressed. Every organization has risk. That's going to happen. But it's important to know what those are and make sure that, in some cases, the mitigation is having the appropriate level of insurance. Sometimes it's taking steps to control something that's deficient, from a technological perspective. If you're, even on Office 365, but you don't have any backup of that data going anywhere, there's an inherent risk there if Microsoft had an issue or you had an insider threat. Maybe, you don't have a good cybersecurity training program in place. So, there's a lot of templates for those things that we can help, a client build out so that they're meeting those metrics. So I know it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but a good risk assessment is at heart going to help you find the deficiencies between what you're doing and what you should be doing. Some of those things include, the technical side that everybody thinks of, which are, vulnerabilities, scanning the network, making sure there's no devices that are unpatched or maybe a little bit old and need to be taken off of the network, up to scans of your cloud environments, making sure that those are healthy and protected. We can even scan, your Microsoft 365 and G Suite instances to make sure that there's nothing administrative from a cloud perspective that's a danger. But that's on the technological side. A risk assessment is more than just technology. It's your agency's holistic approach to security and actually making sure you have a security program. And you need to have that, whether you're a single shop guy, sole prop, out there hanging and banging by yourself, or you've got 100 employees. Yeah. They all need to have things that cover those same things. Now the level of complexity does differ, depending on the size of the organization. So obviously, as I always say, the person with 5 employees has some different requirements and a different level of maturity that's expected if you have 500 employees. And